Thanks, everyone.
I'm going to introduce our speaker, although I'm not really totally prepared to, but Brian Walko has come down from Boulder to talk to our club, and he is, as it says, he's the president of the Flatirons Mineral Club in Boulder. Make sure you go to their mineral show each, early December?
Early December.
Yeah, up at the Boulder County Fairgrounds, which is in Longmont, not in Boulder. And we have a national and international organization called the Fluorescent Mineral Society. And Brian is the head of the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Fluorescent Mineral Society. I honestly don't know what else to say about you, sir.
I'll explain it.
And but that should be enough for a start, and thank you for coming.
You're welcome, Pete. First of all, let's do a check here. So, how does this sound for the voice for everybody out there?
Very good.
Okay, well, as Pete said, my name's Brian Walko, and Pete and I have something kind of in common. We grew up raised probably less than 20 miles from each other in New Jersey. So Pete was a few years ahead of me. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and Pete, Central Jersey. But that area there with Franklin, New Jersey, and the Franklin Minerals was the inspiration that got at least me started in fluorescent minerals, which I'll show you in a little bit. But my background is I grew up in Jersey. I loved skiing. I have to admit, I came to Colorado to college for skiing, education second. I went to University of Northern Colorado, majored in earth sciences, geology. The year before I was ready to graduate was one of the busts in the oil cycle. And my friends were getting laid off the rigs left and right as mud loggers. And I went in and grabbed a teaching certificate and went into teaching earth sciences for 3 years up in Nebraska and 11 years in Longmont, Colorado. And then I got into computers and went back to DU, got my master's in software engineering, and spent 30-some years in pre-internet all the way to just 2 years ago when I pulled the ripcord and left Dell Computing Technical Services, and I've worked all over the world as an IT project management consultant. But my main thing was rocks and minerals for stress relief. I would go out there, you spend a week in San Francisco. I needed one day just to decompress. So grab the folks, head up to the claims, and go after whatever we need to do. So that's a little bit on my background, and then I retired 2 years ago, and somehow people just find out that you're retired and you get absorbed into all these organizations, like all of a sudden president of Flatirons Mineral Club. I was on the board of directors for the Fluorescent Mineral Society. That was too much work, and their webmaster as well. That reminded me too much of work, which I left. So I gave that to somebody else, and now I'm doing this as well as I run my own mineral business. It's wholesale, and then also I do a lot of claims work, surveying, prospecting, and basically PR for people who need to get on private land. I can shoot the breeze with the best of the good old boys up in Boulder County. So that's me. So a little bit about what tonight's presentation is going to be about. Obviously, I've talked a little bit about my background, but there's a little more to it. I'll give you some scientific on the electromagnetic spectrum. Talk a little bit about the ultraviolet spectrum, the subset of the electromagnetic spectrum. What the word luminescence is, and then how fluorescence relates to luminescence. We'll talk about the lamps and how the technology is changing dramatically. I was down in Tucson, and I got to see the prototypes of the basically your handheld shortwave. And pretty impressive what will be out, what's out now and what will be better in 6 months from now, and even better a year from now. I'll show you some of the sites that I collect at. I'm what you call a self-collector. If I don't dig it out of the ground myself, it's not in my collection, except for some of those really high-grade samples that I bought back in my college days when I made trips to Franklin to the Trotter dump and got him out of Nick Zippo's back of his car when after you paid him the $20 to dig all day in the sweat when your 4 o'clock came, and he says, "Oh, how about this?" And I got some world-class stuff from him way back in the late 70s and early 80s. And then talk about Tucson. I was one of the key people involved in the Fluorescent Mineral Show in Tucson. And then just sort of general closing. So let's begin. All right, this is my first setup. Now I don't know, I just from hearing your introduction, most of you started as kids. And I found that just, I did too. This is 6th grade, circa 1966, Edmond Scientific. And if you are familiar, they were in southern New Jersey. They were a big, drooling catalog you would get and just get all types of really cool chemistry things. Well, I decided to get a black light setup. And believe it or not, I still have it. I plugged in this little 10-inch, and again, my laser doesn't work because it's just reflecting, but this 10-inch black light blue bulb, it hasn't been run probably in 30, 40 years, fired up instantly. And it lit up the rocks too. A lot of people, when I talked about this for the Fluorescent Mineral Society, a lot of people actually have this book. It's one of the first books that were published, widely. And then, of course, all types of cool little things, fluorescent paints, fluorescent crayons, invisible crayons, and also my first fluorescent mineral, a piece of ornithite. I still have it. It's in a fishing tackle box. I was able to dig it out. And obviously it's lighting up a lot better now with one of these convoy lamps than, with the black light blue one. But yeah, so that got me started. And so
what? The one in the corner?
Yeah, that's the one in the corner. Yeah. So these photos are not from 1966. I would have my dad take them with the 35 millimeter or whatever he was using then. All right. I decided to enter into my interest in fluorescence into the Indian Hill School in Homedale, New Jersey, which is 3 miles from the Raritan Bay and 10 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. And I entered in physics in March of 1967, and I won first place for my display. Set up a cardboard box, darkened the box, and believe it or not, the way we did Tucson was identical to what I had to invent with the help of my mom, a seamstress, to go ahead and do that. And then was able to have many different things of fluorescence, minerals just being a small part. There are lots of things that glow. So I was really pleased to win this. So now let's go over a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. All right, I think I'm going to look at the screen here. Okay, we all know that the wavelength of visible light runs between 700 and 400 nanometers. Nanometer meaning it's a billionth of a meter. Again, infrared being off to the left-hand side, off, and then of course the rainbow colors in the spectrum. And then they discovered, and I forget, I read about it, but I didn't take the notes. There was somebody that was doing an experiment with a prism, and he took a piece of fluorite and put it off to the side, and sure enough, it started glowing, fluorescing. And here is, it's not the piece, but this is like my second piece, but it noticed that as soon as he moved it off, it was flowing, it was glowing, and then it started the science of, well, what is on the other side, or the right-hand side of the spectrum? And we have, in the area of fluorescence, we have three wavelengths that we primarily use. The first one is long wave, and long wave is abbreviated LW, you'll see that, or now they're going with UVA, and it's about 365 nanometers. Long wave, totally harmless, unless you're getting your long wave from one of these high-powered LEDs. But from one of the bulbs, for those of you who went to parties, black light posters, Jimi Hendrix posters, having your dorm room lit up, that's what was using, was long wave, and it's perfectly harmless through a black light bulb. Ultraviolet B, or midwave, is relatively new. I mean, it's been out there, but to develop the lamps to illuminate in the UVB spectrum, the 311 nanometers, is new. And that's opened up a whole new frontier of minerals. And also, it is one that's responsible, gives you sunburn. And UVC, shortwave, is what primarily lights up majority of the minerals, and there's a lot of energy behind it with shortwave. So those are the three wavelengths. I would be really curious if they had some type of a device that was able to just like hit each particular wavelength and examine and just see, take a whole room of minerals and see what, instead of what goes off at 365, what's at 360, 355, and go ahead that way. But these are the peak ones that they determine, and these are what the lamps are going for. All right, let's go over long wave. All right, first of all, here is a gorgeous picture courtesy of the Fluorescent Mineral Society from Sweden. It doesn't really matter what wavelength you have. Certain minerals will react to different wavelengths, and the colors are just spectacular. But long wave is the lowest frequency, closest to visible light, and it's part of sunlight. It was out there just a little while ago. It easily passes through glass or plastic. So when you go and you see me, I run the fluorescent room at the Denver show. When you come in, you will notice that if there's anything that has any white to it, it's clean. My handkerchief, you'll notice that even though all the filtering and the glass, the long wave will come right through it. But we're not worried about that because it's harmless. Some of the kids go and their shoelaces light up, or their shoes, their sneakers light up. So it will go right through glass, but it's harmless. Black light blue is the bulbs, but they are being replaced by these convoy lamps. And again, this is an earlier prototype, but this is primarily the one I carry in the field with me all the time. Anybody have an idea why I have the red or the tape on it? Yes?
So you can find it when you set it down.
You got it. If I
bought a wand in Michigan.
Yeah, every piece of equipment that I take out at nighttime has this, this, and then I also learned my lesson. For those of you who know Professor Marcus Roski, we do a lot of rare earth prospecting together. And I had my scintillator up there, and I also had two probes on it, and they were the same color as the weeds, and I lost a $300-400 probe, and I just went, oh no, and there's no way, and I just started running a grid pattern. Where was I? you know, back and forth, and I found it. And it now has a brilliant piece of, you know, even though it might not be for nighttime, which you know, we do, but it also, it just helps to find the equipment in the daytime. That's the expensive stuff. Tools, they're all over the place out there. And again, as I said, they're being replaced by these LED flashlights. And I could speak quite a bit about this, but this is just amazing technology. You know, I don't know how many years ago it was that they had just your standard LED flashlights. Now they're able to adjust the LED so it gives off a certain wavelength, and there's different powers. I mean, there we go, I'm hitting that light over there. These things are incredible for prospecting at nighttime. You get that, you can get that. So imagine when you're out in the field, you can go along and you can have one of these in front of you and scan and find anything on the long wavelength. Right now, there is not the equivalent in shortwave. Give it 6 months and this will be out. There are some that are for close-up, but they overheat. And I would for the people who sell them, I'll still recommend on the shortwave, wait a little bit. You don't want to drop $300 and burn yourself when you're touching the end of it and have your batteries go out in about 10 minutes. But these things here, this will last 2-3 days because you're not prospecting all the time. And there's a little bit of heat involved, but these have revolutionized it. The other thing about these LED flashlights is you can get them on Amazon very, very cheap, but you get what you pay for. And the whole thing is in the filter, because even though this is giving off long wave ultraviolet, it's also giving off, you know, if I took the filter off, it's giving off white light. So you have to spend the money on one that does have a filter. So a good convoy now from a couple of the reputable dealers, not the ones on Amazon, but there's a few Way Too Cool out of Phoenix, and Ingenious Designs out of, I think, Kentucky. They sell really high-grade ones, and they guarantee it, and if you break a filter, they'll send you a filter for free. It's not like this guy here that I built from parts from Alibaba in God knows where in China. But the filter is the main thing, so you get it. I ran field trips. Kat was up on one where I took the kids out up in Nebraska, field trip hunting, and we went out at night, and a lot of them could not see anything because they were like flashlights. And then all of a sudden, you know, turn on this, and it's like, whoa, a different world up there because we got rid of the white light. So, and again, they need filters. So that's something that, you know, I can point you to as a couple reputable firms. And not as many, but about 15% of the fluorescent minerals go under long wave. Midwave is what we call the new frontier. This is a piece of Purple Passion Mine, Bill Gardner, who is the man who owns Way Too Cool, one of the key manufacturers of ultraviolet lights, everything from flashlights to display lamps. He owned this mine, and then being, I forget, he's some electrical, well actually he's a nuclear engineer, but he's got the full background. And it's part of sunlight in the middle, but it turned out he had a mine and he tweaked one of his lights into the midwave area, and all of a sudden he has like the world's, you know, most famous pieces of what they call, you know, midwave specimens. Now midwave is sunlight, and midwave is also what we need for vitamin D. Stay outside, you know, within reason. But the interesting thing, and I didn't really realize this until I was doing the research for this presentation, is you activate your cells with midwave radiation, and then the long wave kicks in, and that's what turns it into a suntan. Midwave will give you the burn, but then it kicks in the melanites and the melanoma, and then all of a sudden your skin turns suntan unless you use sunscreen, and it doesn't. So it's kind of interesting how the two wavelengths work together. And these tubes are now more and more prevalent, and you will see them in some of the display cases and some of the minerals. And it's a whole new frontier that's opening up in fluorescent minerals other than the long and the short. And shortwave, again, when you think of fluorescent minerals, you think of these brilliant, what we call Christmas rocks here from the Franklin, New Jersey area. It's the upper end. It is stopped by the ozone layer, so it doesn't really come down and get us. It will, if you are working with these lights, it will cause a burn. At Tucson, well, it happened to me at the Denver show. The first time I helped was 7-8 years ago at the Denver show. I helped somebody set up their case, and I did not have plastic safety glasses on. And my wife, when I got home, she said, "You're suntanned." I suntan easily. And I said, "Yeah, well, must be the lights." I closed my eyes that evening, and it was like sandpaper.
Oh.
I was fried. It's like a day of skiing without the proper glasses up at Winter Park. It hurt really bad. And then it just so happened that one of our pros in Tucson was setting up her case and forgot all about putting her glasses on. I think she had to take the next day off and stay home with a wet wet thing to keep her eyes. It will fry you. And it will also give you a good burn as well. So you have to be very careful. Some people who work with these will actually put sunscreen on, or they'll wear gloves. It doesn't bother me. I'm not exposed that much.
Flash burn from welding.
Yeah,
Same difference.
yeah. You get the same radiation. It's blocked by most forms of glass or plastic. That's why just Home Depot goggles will work well. I usually have 3 sets with me. And the thing is, with shortwave, when you generate shortwave, it won't go out of glass. It has to go out of a special glass. They make them out of quartz or some other weird grade glass. But the other part with shortwave is, and especially when you're running one of these huge display lamps, is it will solarize. That is, the radiation will get caught as a filtering, and the filter will all of a sudden, within about, I forget it, something like 50 to 100 hours, your filter's gone. And then it's leaking and it doesn't work right. So that's why some people who really have these display cases and show all the time, they'll all of a sudden notice that their specimens are not as bright as they used to be because there's other wavelengths leaking in. And the problem is getting these filters is extremely difficult. There's no money in making shortwave ultraviolet filters. So the few people that manufacture lights bought up the whole stock, and the Chinese also bought up the stock. So we're working off of an existing stock, and the Fluorescent Mineral Society is working with Hoya filters and somewhere in the Bay Area to try to get more, at least to get them to make a run for us so that we have stock available. So that's our shortwave, and it's again the most popular for seeing. Okay, all right. The whole thing of fluorescence is a subset of luminescence, and luminescence is light resulting cold light, not from heat. That is, you put, it doesn't matter which one, but I just use this because there's no heat involved in this whatsoever. Any one of these lights, there's no heat. And then it will do something, it will have some type of reaction to it. Fluorescence and its companion phosphorescence, it's cold light. So when I hit this piece of fluorite, there's no temperature involved in this. It's glowing. And its other little companion, which I found last night looking through my kit as a kid, is phosphorescence, where it will glow by itself. And there are minerals, a few of them, willemite being one, and I have a chunk over there. We've got some fluorescent mineralite, willemite in the dark, and sat with a beer, charged them up, 20 minutes in phosphorescence. It's incredible stuff. And unfortunately, since I can only keep what I find, I gave it to the other guys. But it was fun looking at that. Another type of luminescence, or making things go without heat, is trioluminescence, which is hitting it by mechanical action. You know, striking it, strike quartz together, it will spark, and it will glow. My favorite, and with the kids at the Denver show, is the glow sticks, chemoluminescence. That is, you crack the little glow stick, you shake it up, and then you wear it as a bracelet, and or the safety lamps if you go underground. Well, that's a chemical reaction, all part of the luminescence family. And then probably the most fascinating is just nature doing it itself, bioluminescence. For those of you who grew up in the Midwest or back east, fireflies is your classic example. But there's all types of deep sea creatures that will go and glow for attracting food, or attracting food, looking for food. And there's probably another 5 or 6 more in the family of luminescence. But the one that we're zeroing in on tonight is fluorescence. And the whole thing with fluorescence is it's the property of light at one wavelength coming in, and it excites the electrons, and it gives off light at a different wavelength. So here it's green, I hit it, and now it illuminates under blue. But the thing that you have that sets fluorescence apart is it's immediate. That is, you don't have to hit it, you don't have to charge it up, you just boom, light it up, and it goes. And then again, it's immediate, and it's off. And I'll give you the scientific part there. The other part is, with fluorescence, we're using ultraviolet, so that takes us back to the ultraviolet spectrum, or the visible light spectrum. It emits at a different wavelength, a lower wavelength, so that, if this is ultraviolet, I can't have something illuminating in ultraviolet. It's got to be blue, red, green, and so forth. It won't go into the X-rays or cosmic rays or gamma rays. So it's a lower excitement. And it took a while. I had to go to YouTube University and brush up on this. That is, you can find anything you want as long as you'll see who's decent. This is the Jablonski diagram, and very simply, what happens, and I wish I have a laser, but it's not working on the screen here. So let me just do this. First of all, let me get the rock off. All right, to make something work, and again, there's all types of math behind this. But what will happen is you excite something with ultraviolet radiation. It will cause the electrons to kick up to another shell. So they get that light, they get the energy, and they're happily just spinning around up there. But eventually what will happen, like instantaneously, is they bump into each other, and then as they bump in, they will start glowing. And this is the part up in here that gives you your immediate fluorescence as they drop back down again. The other thing that will happen is it has to do with the way the electrons, orbit. Or again, it's been years since I've had physics, but the way the electrons go, it will go and they'll cross over into this other area, and they'll switch directions. And that delayed direction is what's called phosphorescence, which is, instead of immediate, it's what will cause this little guy to glow. And if we were in the dark, he would be going for a little bit here. So that's kind of the part. There's a whole, there's probably 30, 40 50 of these guys out there, from PhDs explaining it to, I don't use TikTok, I have no idea what those people would even say. But there's a reason why things fluoresce, and it's called activators. And they're trace impurities in the minerals that get excited when you hit it with UV radiation. And with this, the most common one, especially in the Franklin, Ogdensburg, New Jersey area, is manganese. Probably the second most common one is uranium. Manganese makes the red, uranium makes the green. Tungsten, I don't remember exactly what tungsten does, but each one of these will have a certain color, and it's just a trace amount. If you put too much in, nope, you won't get anything out of it. So that's something. So you have to have some activator, and there are a couple minerals that will just go by themselves. The other part that is fun is we do a lot of hunting up in Boulder County. Again, I work with Marcus, Phil Pearson on rare earth minerals. Is the rare earth elements in trace amounts will fluoresce as well. I know europium gives a nice blue color. I've seen that one go when I've been prospecting with that and with the scintillator. Just as you have activators, you have quenchers. And just as the name says, they dampen it. So if there are some impurities in trace amounts in your mineral, and iron and copper are the two biggest culprits, they won't fluoresce. So you have to have that right amount. And it just so happens that Franklin, New Jersey has the perfect amount of manganese and other traces that really work, versus if we went outside and just west of town here and started poking around, you wouldn't see anything. And again, there's certain areas in the state that are pretty good because of the trace elements. So we have quenchers involved in that. Okay. This is a backup, because you never know with two monitors. You see, I can look at this and see the next slide on mine, but I can't do it because the darn laser won't work. It works over here, but it won't work on there. So I said, no, got to point with the mouse here. All right, and large amounts it won't work. All right, lamps. There are many different types. Again, I've been stressing, and again, the whole industry is going this way. The collection is with the LEDs. I would recommend, if you really want to get into this, is to purchase a Way Too Cool or a Genius Design for about $70. And it will be more than what you need in long wave. Hold off on the midwave and hold off on the short wave. I saw them in Tucson. They're not that good. I saw the prototype of the short wave. They have heating problems, but what the gentleman who makes them, he showed me his cooling mechanism. It's already patented, and now it's just a matter of, this is Bill Gartner's fan, and he's got a fan mechanism, and then pretty soon, in 6 months, they'll be in production, and for about $350, it will revolutionize. Because otherwise, when I'm out in the field, I have to carry one of these, for shortwave, I have to carry one of these around. And it's $700-800. You trip and fall. It's that's a lot of money. And I don't have the best balance anymore. Of course, with my convoys here, I wear it around my neck, and it's I have multiple filters. This one here I usually keep in my back pocket. And for display purposes, I have a 35 watt, which is over on the table there. Most people, when they set up their cases, are running 95 watts through theirs. But again, this is about the limit you can get with a battery pack. And these, what we use are the new generation batteries that are used for jump starting your car. You know, there's just small little battery packs, and they'll last half hour to an hour, depending on the use and the temperature. They're lithium. So let's go collecting fluorescent minerals. My favorite thing is, and Franklin. If there's any place in the world when you talk fluorescent minerals, you talk Franklin, New Jersey. As a matter of fact, I don't know who the owner of U-Haul is, but they had something, you know, on the side of U-Haul vans for every state. New Jersey is represented, yeah, no, not by chemical plants and not by the turnpike and not by the beach. It's represented by minerals from Franklin, New Jersey, and they did a pretty nice job. And it's a great museum. A lot of ore came out of there, zinc ore, basically because of its proximity to the growing New York City area and how zinc was used in the metallurgy process. Vintage photo, I gotta say this is it might even have been on a college trip home, so this gosh could have been 1975. My younger brother, myself at the Trotter dump. And then here's another one where I went back to visit my parents, so I don't think, yeah, probably college or first year or two of teaching when I had lots of time and no money. Go home and mooch off the parents. But this is me hunting in that area. So here's the Franklin part. It's up in this part of New Jersey. Again, anybody from the the tri-state area can get to it, very accessible. Again, a large zinc complex, and again, it really helped the growth of New York City and all the skyscrapers and the metal that was used. The mines are all closed, they're all flooded, but there are dumps that you can pay money, and now they're even limiting access to the dumps to just a couple times a year. Again, most of you have been around the mineral collecting business. We wish it was the way it was in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Now, I mean, yeah, I could just call the guy up and he'd meet me at the gate and I give him $20, a lot back then, but I could haul out 100 pounds, you know, just fill up the back of the car. Now they charge you a lot to get in, and they charge you by the pound of what you're taking out. And they only do it once or twice a year. You know, so it's a finite supply unless you go to places that aren't as popular. And again, there's people that are just, you know, people that have PhDs and really wrote lots of incredible papers on the complexity and the reasons why Franklin is the way it is. Bob Carnine, from your neck of the woods, he's one of the experts on Franklin. And I forget what college in Pennsylvania he taught at, but he's published many papers in that area. All right, we didn't have this last year, but we've had it every year at the Denver show. This is taken off of the old Broncos, the Three Amigos from way back when. These are three fairly decent sized pieces of white calcite and reddish willemite. This is a 95 water, courtesy of the show council. It's 2 feet long, so these are pretty decent sized specimens. And what we do is we have them out on a table. Obviously nobody's going to take them, plus we watch them. And then light them up. And the really cool part is we have the kids there. And they put their hand on it and say, touch it. And they touch it, and there's no heat. It's this cool light. And the other thing too is I make sure that lamp is pointed towards me, because I don't want to blind little guys down there and hit them with 95 watts of shortwave ultraviolet. But again, I have my glasses on too. But this is really good. And this one here is actually there's a fault. You can't, photographing, that would be a whole topic, but photographing these minerals is extremely difficult. But I can just say that one side is a different color, red-orange, than the other side, due to the movement. And you can see the difference when you actually go up close to it. And it is definitely interesting along this, this fracture, this little fault here. So this is our famous one that we show, and wherever the show is for, well, it will be back at the convention center. We get more room, we might bring these guys back. Well, we just didn't know this year, you know, what space and everything. All right, another place that I go collecting. Yes?
The left one, you can see the gneissic structure very, very nicely. Sometimes you can't see it on the white light, but under the ultraviolet you can...
The left side here?
Yeah, no, the left specimen.
Mm-hmm.
You see the layering of the gneissic structure.
Yep. Yeah, it is amazing because some of this you really can't see, you know, in daylight.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to tell it. It looks like, you know, calcite. The other one is I led a fluorescent Rocky Mountain field trip. Again, we're not a sanctioned organization for field trips because of insurance reasons. So I just picked 4 people that I could trust that wouldn't sue me if I killed them, or vice versa. And we got permission from Ray DeMarc, again, through CMS and, you know, networking, and, you know, Ray lets club members in, and we did a 5-day trip to Socorro for hunting fluorescent minerals. And this is in the Oscura Mountains, and it's about, Socorro's 70 south of Albuquerque, and I think this is then 30 or 40 miles east of Socorro. It's in the area where you pass right by the Trinity site, where the first nuclear bomb was detonated. And there's a sign. You can't get in there because it's White Sands missile range. But I did bring my Geiger counter scintillator along to the Bingham Rock Shop, and because where we had to sign the paperwork. And I said, test the ground here. We're only 20 miles from the blast site, and it hasn't been that many years, 75 years. And the background radiation was less than my house in the foothills of Boulder. Nothing. Now again, I think they just opened it up the first weekend in April because we were going to run a trip down there, but there's no hotel rooms, so that gave me indication that you know, thousands of people from all over come to visit a little monument and hopefully pick up a little tiny piece of trinitite. But from up here, you're way out in the middle of nowhere. Thank goodness for really good GPS and GPS maps and so forth. You 4-wheel drive up, I gotta say, it'd be marginal on a Subaru, marginal. You'd have to crawl up. But any pickup truck with 4-wheel drive can get up there no problem. You don't really need a Jeep. And then here's the lower part, and then again, I wish it's a little bigger, and here's the upper part where we're doing collecting. Here is Conrad North. He was the former president of the Fluorescent Mineral Society. They mine this for lead, dry mining, which is very interesting technique. But in the side of the limestone, there's these adits. Now they're all locked up because they are under claim, and you can't go inside, but you can go along the cliffs and you can go and see fluoride. And here is a classic piece of Blanchard Fluorite. Yeah, I think that color is turning out okay. And this is what it looks like in the daytime. Now the thing with Blanchard Fluorite, underground it's deep blue. Expose it to sunlight, it gets a natural bleaching process. But what it will look like under UV is like, whoa. We went there in the daytime, and then we called up Ray when we got back into cell phone range and asked permission to go back up there at night, and he said, yes, just make sure you're up on the mountain before dark. And I said, sure, that's no problem. Go up the mountain, watch the sunset there and over the desert, and it was like Franklin, New Jersey, except instead of red and green, it was blue and orange. The whole ground, everywhere. Wow. Cliffs everywhere were lit up. It was absolutely incredible. And we'll try to get back there in October. Another classic piece of Blanchard fluoride crucite, which I think is a lead carbonate crucite? So lead carbonate and carbonate coming from the limestone and barite. This is what it looks like if you chiseled it out of the side of the cliff, which I'm making a video right now. I had my buddy film it, shot it with an iPhone because I'm not bringing my Nikon up there. I was just like, no, it's too much dirt. And I chiseled out a really great piece there. And two things I forgot. I forgot my hard hat, and I think I forgot my safety glasses because I was just too excited. I didn't want to go back to the truck and get it. And that's what it looks like under long-wave ultraviolet. Again, pretty impressive pieces come out of Blanchard. I mean, people collect it for the fluoride, but yeah. Yes?
You said the other piece bleached in sunlight. Is that permanent, or do we go back?
Permanent. This piece here, once the sunlight hits it, it's a goner. So that's the thing is, if you ever get the opportunity to find something, like it's on the underside of a rock, and it's that deep blue color, you better wrap it up in something dark, and that's the way it stays.
And not use your UV light on it.
Yeah, well actually the dark stuff really doesn't fluoresce that much. Somebody gave me a piece and I hit it with the lamp. It's more the lighter that goes, but yeah, you don't want to hit the UV because that's what's doing it.
Right.
Yes?
If you've got a specimen of that nice blue fluoride, keep it in a closed drawer.
Yeah, keep it dark. Now, this is my hometown, or not hometown, my neck of the woods. Jamestown. I live about 7 miles north of Boulder on the mouth of Left Hand Canyon. I've been on Left Hand Fire Department for 20 years, and through the fire department and saving multiple people's houses, land, I don't run calls or anything. I'm on the board of directors. But if I need access to private property, I'll do the research myself. I will then find through going through all the county records, where the property is, who the owner is. I'll ask the chief, do you know so-and-so? He says, oh yeah, I know. I said, okay, what's the person like? Would it be open for me to call him up? And no, this guy likes a personal visit. I was held up once at gunpoint. And then all of a sudden I said, hey, and I'll just leave the gentleman's name blank. I said, this is Brian from Left Hand. I pulled open I always wear my fire jacket. Pulled over, I said, we saved your house. And he said, oh, Brian, yeah, well, yeah. And he shook my hand and put his gun away, and we're best buddies. Until I told him about all the uranium under his house, and he says, I'm 82 years old, I don't give a blank. And so I have complete access to his property. So that's the thing, I network my way in, and all my really good stuff is private property. Even though we have claims on BLM land or Forest Service land. So one of the on private is the Emmet Mine. Some of you have probably been there. And the Emmet is known for fluorite. And again, you gotta kind of know what you're looking for. I should have the pieces over there. And here's the fluoride under long wave. It's pretty impressive stuff to go find this at nighttime and walk along. And we know where, I know now, I don't have to scout it in the day. The only thing I do is I take a group of 2 or 3 people up that I can trust that aren't going to sue the owners if we trip and fall, or if the side of the glory hole comes crashing down, we can do it. Another really great mineral that's up there is autunite. And I forget what it's a uranium. It's uranium. And you can prospect for it several ways. In that neck of the woods, I consider almost every area hot. I don't allow any kids up there. Basically, my rule of thumb is if you're of childbearing age, you're not allowed up there. This is very low at 162 CPS, counts per second, being this close, because there's not that much autunite being lit up, and it lights up a brilliant green. Here's a sample that we found it with the scintillator, because the scintillator can shoot, 1, 2, 3 feet underground, and then dug it out. And again, precautions. The few times I actually wear a mask. I had to wear a mask with this because of the dust and the uranium will get inside of you. That's what will kill you. It can get on your skin and just wash it off. And this registered, I think it was about 5,000 CPS. I mean, it triggered the alarm. When I shot the video of uncovering this piece, I had to shut the thing off. The guys were saying, "Wow, this is really annoying." It's just my scintillator going off, but it's really just incredible green color. And you can find it in spots, you can find it in veins. There's mines up in Washington State, near Spokane. You can find it in roses and blades. This is spectacular green. And again, uranium is the activator here. So we have night hunts. Another one, and somebody has a piece of this highlight opal. We'll try it later on after I'm done here. There are sides of the Emmet glory hole that are full of this, and you hit it with shortwave, and this is what it turns out to look like. Again, it's pretty spectacular, and also if you look very closely and it's spotted around here, you can see some fluoride. And so we pull out three different minerals, fluorescent minerals. But again, with the highlight, it's shortwave, so you do have to bring one of the shortwaves up. And I usually hand that to one person who pretty steady-footed. All right, another mine that I have exclusive access to is the old Bueno mine out of Jamestown. It's a major producer of gold, as well as all other types of minerals. Here's a piece of sphalerite, and again, I collect ores. That's my hobby. And ores of Boulder County is going to be my display case for the up-and-coming Denver show. Here's a piece of sphalerite. Sphalerite is a great one because here it is under long wave. So you can find this just with one of these. So that's kind of a fun one to go after. I run a trip for the Flatirons Mineral Club, and also I invite CMS, Colorado Mineral Society, to join me. We drive 5.5, 6 hours up to Crawford, Nebraska. That was my first teaching assignment, was up there. I learned from the best, the old timers who have long since passed away on, it wasn't black light, it was fossil hunting before they put the restrictions in, and it was also fairburn and agate hunting. But one of the things that we discovered on one of the earlier field trips is, there's a lot of Cal Sydney beds out there, besides the agate beds. You're looking at 100, 150 square miles of agates. And believe it or not, you can go anywhere and you will see chip marks and agates. People, they used to we used to drive our pickup trucks out there all the time. Now you get arrested, drones will get you. So here's some people that are looking in the daytime, and I take them here as a first stop to get them familiar, because what I do is we hunt agates. We hunt agates in the daytime, but I want them to get used to where we're going to be at night. So you kind of have to get familiar with the terrain. So here is a classic piece of Geotech Cal Sydney. You can see that there's a little bit inside. And then here is the same piece under shortwave. And this is the part that, again, the Flatirons Mineral Club, we bought a bunch of little convoys to hand out to people, especially just for this trip. And I saw these kids with their $15 Amazon lights, and they're not seeing anything. And then you kind of gather a couple of them together and give the most responsible one the convoy. And again, that's long wave, but it's enough to start activating it. And they get all excited and everything. And then for the grand finale is what I do is I gather them around just what they were walking on, here. So I gather them around, and this is my college hammer. Still use it. Well, I use now a 3-pounder. I still have it. Still works. And I'll light it up with the shortwave and the oohs and ahs when you can take the ground from blah, brown, ugly to like you're walking on green lava. And it's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And then even some accents with lichen on here. Now the interesting things that I have found with the going up there, the bigger pieces are gone. They're not there anymore. So it's like, you know, I do know other places, and they're like, you know, I won't take a group field trip up to the places that I can still get the nice geo. It's like the trip that I ran this fall. It was one of the old-time members of the club. It was his 75th birthday, and I says, "You want a treat?" And he says, "Sure." This guy is sure. He climbed Devil's Tower 160 times.
Wow.
He, Terry O'Donnell, he stopped when he was on his second round of all 14ers. He came from a mountain climbing family in Boulder, Colorado. And so what I did, Terry, he said, "You want to go find something really cool? Because it's like secret." So, sorry, Kat, I had to leave you behind and leave the other people behind. And I took them over to a special place that I had marked on my GPS. Sure enough, what did I find? A 3-foot hole. But they weren't in the right area, and I knew exactly what I was looking for because I discovered it by accident like 5 years ago, and it's treacherous to get down there, and I have to use two hiking sticks to get down, and then also we usually get somebody that's younger just in case we trip and fall. Terry's a mountain goat, right down, right up, and we filled up, and we each got incredible Cal Sydney roses that fluoresce brilliant green, and so that was his 75th birthday present, and he thanked me up and down for that, and I just said, "It's great to have you along and give you the treat." So that's my local stuff, but let's talk about Tucson. The Tucson show was 3 years in the making. Al Liebetrol out of Central Oregon, he's a double PhD, worked at the Handover nuclear plant. They did this 25 years ago, a group of them, and there still were about 3 or 4 of those guys still alive. And we did it for the 50th anniversary of the Fluorescent Mineral Society. But unfortunately, the 50th anniversary was when Tucson was canceled, the main show. This is some of the satellite shows. So that gave us a little extra time to figure out and plan this event. It was massive. I mean, I've ran multi-million-dollar software development projects, and this rivals those, just in a different area. All the logistics and the coordination and the people and the groups. We had what was known as the FMS Express. There were people that drove cases down, drove lamps down, drove minerals. You know, one came out of the Seattle area, another one came out of the North Bay area, LA area. One came all the way down from Franklin. One came from Vermont, and I think another one out of Chicago. And I ran the Denver route down. And so we all met at the convention center on Saturday, well before the show started. And then here are all the lamps that, these were Don Newsom, who is one of the founders of the Fluorescent Mineral Society. He owns UV Systems, which makes the display lamps. I think he might even make a portable lamp. But these are the 95 and 120 watt lamps. These are the Frya. And he made a deal for us that you could rent or you could buy at 1/3 the price. Which these, and I forget what color, but one color was rental and one color was, I think the blues were people who actually purchased lamps from Don. So he did a really big favor to the Fluorescent Mineral Society. So we unloaded everything, and then again we had to, like we do here at the Denver show, we had to set up the cases. And again, here's all the material. We have the risers, we got the planks, we got somebody can see that this is one of the cases I brought down, lamps, you name it, minerals. But we had to darken everything. Just like when I was in elementary school, my mom helped me get some dark cloth. It was a whole big effort because Tucson was a bear to deal with. We couldn't put any screw holes in their cases. We had to have specially designed brackets to mount. There was probably 3 weeks of arguing, and that's when I dropped out, saying, you can argue on screw size, I don't care, I'm bringing my own case down, and argue on who is going to, how we're going to darken the cases, and who's going to do this, and how much power, and again, all these double E's and stuff like that, figuring out the amount of power that we're going to need. Tucson Fire Department involved, because these lamps are not UV approved, none of them are. So we had to get special waivers for those, and it was a couple days of setup, and then it comes to setting up a case. Now, is my correct that you set up for fluorescence? So for those of you who don't know, this is my case that I brought down, and I have 2 lights that I borrowed from the council. The first one here is my shortwave, but if you look in the back, there is a 65 watt long wave. So there's a couple things you have to consider when you're setting up a case. One is you have to make sure it's dark. And I spray painted everything, and the best paint to use is Rust-Oleum Flat Black. It won't glow. But it will fade after a while. The other thing is and again, this is where it's real important because you're arranging your minerals. I know that when I tested it at home and I took photographs of it, I wrote pieces of paper down, you can see my back row is lit up. These are all my my long wave minerals, my Blanchard piece, my autunite that's all exposed, some petrified wood, and hard to say what another piece of Blanchard. And then in the front, where the 95 watt shortwave was hitting, was to get these, the willowite pieces, some agate, all different other ones, and it's to get the light aligned properly so that when it glows. I mean, again, it's a function of, farther away you are, the less power it has. So again, we're up here, we're like chains. And then once you got everything set up, then you went through and then you labeled your cases, you put the glass on, and then we were pretty much ready to go with the R row. I forget, there are 8 rows of these on both sides. It was incredible, 50 cases. When the show worked or went on, we were acting as guides, docents. Again, everybody kind of favored their own case. So here's one of my buddies from California, and he's explaining his case to a couple people. The mask ordinance was in effect down in Tucson, so everybody was wearing masks. Some of us realized the amount of leakage that chances of a coronavirus living more than a couple milliseconds with all that ultraviolet radiation escaping was nil, and we didn't wear masks. But the public did, and it was very well contained. But I don't have the official count. We figure 3,000-4,000 people came through our room. We were the highlight of the show, and the thing that really got us so disappointed, and sorry Tucson if you hear this, is they refused to hang our banner up above, like that said Fluorescent. We have a big, huge banner that we used to use at the Denver show, which I had. They wouldn't do it, couldn't do it, union laws, so forth. They had a TV. How many people can see that, like from across the convention center? So we actually had people out there hawking, inviting people to come in. Yeah, it was pretty cool. You were at the front desk, but there were people in front of you, Pete, dragging the people in and so forth. Now, once we got this done, these are the best of the best in the world. These are the top collectors and the top specimens. And I just want to show you what makes a good case. You can do a good case mineralogically speaking, but also for the general public, you want that variety. You want something that is, here we have again a nice piece of Franklin. I don't know what that is. I think that's Hardy stone. Here's 2 great veins in a piece of willemite. Not sure what this is. Not sure what this is. Looks like some type of highlight opal. Highlight opal. But the thing here is, one person made this nice case, and these are big pieces. They're the size of that guy on the table there. They're almost football-sized pieces. That was his case. He didn't need much. It was incredible, just to see the difference and the labeling. Now this one was a winner for the mineralogical aspect. This is Sphalerite, and I honestly don't know the chemical composition of Sphalerite. I do remember when I was in college and I went to Franklin to collect, and after I got done, it was like my 3rd, 4th trip up there, so the guy knew me. He invited me to his basement. His whole wall was full of this. This miner, besides mining, he knew how to high grade. And I don't know how he got it out of his lunchbox. He must have had a backpack or just paid the hoist guy to dump this someplace else. This is Sphalerite. This is probably one of the rarer ones. It's because of the yellow color. It's also one of the hardest to photograph. We could not photograph professionally. There was a contract with somebody to do that. And also, once those cases were bolted shut, you needed permission and a Tucson police officer to open it up and fix it. So all these photographs of the cases, I took with my iPhone. Now it's absolutely incredible. I got an iPhone Pro 11. It did an incredible job. It beats my Nikon setup that I use for my professional shoots. And this one here, and then throwing it into a Photoshop or Lightroom, I brought it out. And George Pullman he's in the Phoenix area. He's the owner of UV Products. They're another lamp manufacturing company, but he's more of a collector and a dealer. Real nice guy. Again, another Jerseyite that wound up out west. Here's another case. This particular person has a lot of minerals in it. I would say that if I was displaying, I'd cut about 1/3 off and get a little more space. But he does a nice arrangement with the different types of minerals. This is a shortwave case. And again, Franklin material. And you can just see that he spaces out the colors very nicely. All the labels were really done well, that people could see it. And he did a really good job. Here's another particular case. Again, you want that eye-catching piece, like right there. And again, this is like calcite and probably calcite and fluoride, the blue. Here, something that draws your eye to it, and then you can look. And here's a really great one with a red bottom. And again, I can't read the again, taken with an iPhone, I can't read it. But from red to green, and then you've got your other ones in here. So this is a nice spacing for your case. I mean, if you're doing something for a museum, this is the way you do it. Here's somebody else's case. Again, a whole bunch of different minerals. The other problem with photographing these minerals is the color. Notice this piece of Wernerite. It's just overpowering. So sometimes, for those of you who are familiar with photography, you've got to cut this out with Photoshop, adjust the other ones, adjust this guy, and put it back in its place, and it takes time. It's a pain in the butt, but it's worth it to make a really good photo. But again, I am impressed with the sensors now on the new iPhones and I don't even have a 13, and I won't get one for a while. All right, here is Don Newsom. Now, I think this was on your website. Don Newsom is one of the co-founders of the Fluorescent Mineral Society. He's in the Seattle area. After chatting with him, it turned out he went to the same college my youngest son went to, Seattle Pacific, and he set up an educational display, and I don't know if we're going to be able to hear this or not.
Can you find the golden yellow meionite from Canada and the blue fluorite from the Weardale district in England under this long wave ultraviolet light? Short wave ultraviolet. Can you find the two Wollastoneites from the Sterling Hill Mining Museum? One yellow, one orange. We now have both long wave and short wave ultraviolet. Can you find the blue-white Veritavite from Tajikistan? It fluoresces very much like scheelite specimens. Here we have phosphorescence. As the white lights come up, we have just plain FLRs, funny-looking rocks.
That's the only part I don't like, funny-looking rocks, because in their own part they're very unique. But Don did a great job. He had 3, maybe 4 lamps in there. Two long wave, one short, 2 and 2. And plus, he had the ability to spin. He had some Temecula calcite that will change colors depending on the wavelength. He did a great job. He did win the prize for best educational display. That was well worth it. He did a great job on displaying that. Here's another one. This is from Jennifer Moore, who is my equivalent, except for the Northwest chapter. She's out of, I think, Vancouver, British Columbia. And she set up a train. There's no, and this side is shortwave. And this side over here is long wave. And then you can see that they will eventually, again, there's some leakage coming from the portal here. They'll change colors or they'll stop fluorescing. Here, that one went to pink. This one's not as bright. Here's some Franklin. And we start losing a little bit, a little color. And she had 2 trains going at the same time.
That's pretty cool.
It was like, wow. And then they will go and eventually fade. I wish I would have had the other train. It would have had a little more effect, but being a guide and there was so much happening all over, I was glad I was able to get this and have it turn out okay. Again, just with an iPhone. All right, the other part was they hold our Fluorescent Mineral Society holds our annual meeting in Tucson. Again, it was for the 50th, but we had to make it the 51st. We rent out a church like this. This is Al Levitrol, who again, he worked his tail off. We were really grateful that Al was able to make it. And on the last day, Al kind of got so excited he forgot to take one of his medicines and wound up in the hospital. Had to stay in Tucson for a few days until he was stable enough to fly home. But he got to see his vision come through, and he's doing well in Central Oregon. This is Don Newsom. He's again one of the founders, and they have a Hall of Fame And I think this year's Hall of Fame went to Bob Jones, who was one of the writers for Rock and Gem, one of the key writers in Rock and Gem magazine.
And he's only 96 or something, isn't he?
Yeah, he's way up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he still writes.
Well,
I know, really well. So we had a big thing. They had grab bags, and everybody got a number in a grab bag. I got myself a slab of willemite, about the size of this table, cut in half. I mean, it was heavy. Thank goodness I had my truck this year to get that thing home. I am going to cut it up, and then it will be offered for sale because, again, I only keep what I find. And it's polished, too. So get a little bit of price out, get a little bit of money out of it. And then after the meeting and the business and so forth, there was all types of swaps and trading going on where, people would take, their fines, their extras, and, swap trade. This guy, Bruce, somebody nicknamed him Father Time, but he's a great guy. Summertime in Missoula, Snowbird, and Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and knows every spot in New Mexico, Arizona, and Montana to find fluorescent minerals. Now me, being a self-collector, I love cactus. And there's no rule about me bringing cactus home. I have cactus that I have to admit I smuggled back from a college field trip from Mexico that is now, I guess it's coming on 50 years old, and it's starting to bud an arm, the swirl.
Is the picture on the left your garage?
Well, I gotta say, if it was rocks, I'd be out on the street. As my wife, we have a battle on that. But no, this is Box Cactus Nursery north of Tucson. It's a very famous place. You can buy everything from little button cactus for $2 to swirls, which they only sell up to, I think, 7 feet for $500 to $1,000. Anything 7 feet or higher, they won't transplant. Yeah, so they got to turn them over. This place is huge,
and you can just see everything imaginable. So it was my second trip there because 2 years ago when I was down there, I brought 6 back on the airplane in my suitcase, wrapped, newspaper, blue tape, and everything. 5 of them are still alive, and they're on my shelf. And these guys here are probably wondering, what am I doing looking out at the snow out of the second side? But now they're all happily adjusted, and 3 of them have bloomed because it's now blooming season in Arizona. And you just have to be careful with the cactus. I tried to get the lady to help me with native cactus. That's what I wanted. I didn't want ones that were kind of non-Southwest cactus. So I have, swirl, Oregon pipe, golden barrel, different ones. And now they're all along the shelf, and they're doing fine. So that's what I brought. And I had my truck too. So that I could put them in the front seat of my truck and keep them good temperature. The other thing that I did was when the show was over, it was finally takedown. And you talk about a madhouse. We were given show closed at 5. Well, you've been with the Denver show. And then they had to do a real sweep. All Tucson police going through and checking everything. And then all of a sudden, luckily they fed us, and we went through, and it was like, woof, clean things out. It's amazing how fast it is to take these things down. And then we just had to leave the Tucson cases. Mine was a little bit more effort, plus all the cars backed up underneath, and it was just like, oh gosh. But I expected to be out of there by 10. I got out, I think, about 8 o'clock, and that was okay. Here's a shot of, again, I love swirl cactus and the Tucson from the Tucson Convention Center. And I treated myself to what's the restaurant? Mariposa's Chihuahua? Pete? Morisco's Chihuahua. And I celebrated there with a few margaritas and a nice spicy dinner. And it was, again, excellent food. And then next day, Teresa at the Saguaro National Monument, a little bit of hiking there. And then on the way home, and then the next day, I went and visited a friend who retired. And this is from the Catalina foothills, real fancy houses looking out over Tucson, and got to sip wine and watch a classic Arizona sunset, across the mountain from her deck. And that was my end of Tucson. And the next morning I was on the road to Colorado, but took a different way. I didn't really like the stretch. I mean, I-10 is kind of dumpy and a pretty dirty highway too. I mean, they need to get more of those people, volunteers, picking up all the stuff. But I decided to go up to Silver City, Mexico, just to see it, and came across the Chino Santa Rita mine. Pete corrected me on this when I originally posted it on my Facebook page. It was at the time they made the sign, the world's third largest copper mine. Now it's down there because of the mines in Chile, but just doing the last research, it's close to 3 miles, 2.5 to 3 miles across, and 1,500 feet deep. And they're not going after ounces per ton; it's grams per ton that they're going ahead and processing. And Arizona, due to the green revolution, needs copper. How many? I forget how many. I posted it. Was it 800 pounds of copper go into a wind turbine? The amount of copper wire being used and generating wind energy and green energy has to come from somewhere, and Arizona is booming. I met a young kid who worked, who was interested in my display, and I asked him, well, he said, I just got transferred down here. And I said, where do you work for? Caterpillar. I said, what are you doing with CAT down here? He says, we have a testing site. Like, D12s? He says, no, prototype, much bigger. And they take it out to the copper mines south of Tucson, and they have permission to go and work in certain areas and work out these monstrous caterpillars. I wish I would have, networked my way a little bit more to get in and actually get a ride in one of these babies. I mean, I did once in college get a ride in a drag line up in Wyoming, and that was impressive. So copper is booming in Arizona. Copper is king. And then the other thing is, on the downside from the Santa Rita Chino mine was a road that, I'll tell you, between the ice, yes, we're up here in the, up there, 7,000 feet, southern New Mexico, there's still snow, shady spots, ice. This rivals probably the pass between Ouray and Silverton as far as, nervousness. And I've jeeped every trail in Colorado other than Pearl Pass. And it was like, whoa, get me down to Truth or Consequences where I can get on that interstate and hit 90 miles an hour and fly home. So that was kind of fun there. What's that? Yeah, you're ready to tell your ride. Well, no, the one, the $1 million highway. The array to tell your ride is Imogene Pass, isn't it? Bear Creek is coming the backside. Yeah, I've been down that one. I nearly got on a college field trip, a graduate school field trip. I was driving a van up the first level to switch back to the Idorado mine, and we parked. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something come down, and between the two vans, a basketball-sized rock, 60, 70 miles an hour, nicked the side of the van. Down the mountain it went. Almost everybody left that van and walked down. And then I had to have the professor, guide me to make a turnaround on a geology field trip van. And I kept one eye as I was poking around looking for, basically it's just pyrite we were finding. I kept an eye up on the mountain because, yeah, that was the closest I ever came to being killed or having people killed. And it was, boy, that was, you know, we were extremely fortunate on that trip. And it was rain too. That's another thing is I won't lead any of my field trips up in the Jamestown area after it rains because that's your thing when rocks are going to come down. So at the end here, first of all, I want to encourage you to take a look at the Fluorescent Mineral Society if you have any interest at all. Here's our emblem. We have our web address is uvminerals.org. And I have cards over here that I can give you that you'll have that information. We publish every 2 months. We publish a UV waves, which is kind of a combination scientific combination adventure. The trip that I ran down to Socorro, we got our own complete 23-page edition to it, and there's me in the center here on there. But the reason why it's silver foxes is we're all retired and we all have gray hair. But we explored the whole area from Bingham to Socorro to Magdalena. And then they do once every, I think it's every 2 years, we do have a scientific journal. That's, I mean, you name it, you can find it, every equation, everything mathematical on the Journal of Fluorescent Mineral Society. And that's worth it there. And it's only, I think it's only $25 a year. So it's pretty good. And the website is, I helped develop this website and now it's being transferred and somebody else is taking it over and they're going to enhance it and do more things with it. So we have a lot. And this is for those when it gets, Bob publishes it, is all my sources of where I got everything. So any questions before I show you a couple of minerals? Yes.
Okay, we have a question from our Zoom audience.
Great.
And we're headed to Spruce Grove next month looking for scheelite. I'm curious about other fluorescents in that area.
Spruce Grove where?
Spruce.
Here in, I haven't, I've only hunted in near that area rare, so I'm not quite sure. I would, what I would do for hunting the teriols in a brand new area is go get a barbecue cover, a Weber barbecue cover and a light. And then just, you know, if you find something that's interesting, throw the cover over you to get some darkness and see if it lights up, take it. Yeah, I do have a great photograph of one of my buddies on the side of the cliff on the Blanchard and, you know, holding on for dear life, throwing his barbecue cover on. Yeah, like, all right. So that's what I would recommend is bring some type of cover. And again, if you have one of the newer, real high-powered convoys, you can take your hat, and if it's a cloudy day, you can get things to light up.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from that side? Okay.
We'll try all kinds of things, but the barbecue covers are really best. Well, because they kind of hold their shape.
Okay, maybe we can get the light here since.
They're big enough you can kneel down and completely cover it. The trouble is, when the sun comes out, you eat barbecue sauce pretty soon.
Okay, here's a couple things. This is this piece here. This is caliche. Now, I'm not a desert Southwest person. This is junk rock in the desert, but I just thought it was really cool. And when we were at Blanchard, we lit up a whole side of a cliff. It was orange. It was like, for us from Colorado, it was like, wow, this is really neat to see. This is caliche with a calcium carbonate. Here is, and I'll keep this up afterwards. Here's a classic piece of Blanchard Fluorite that I chiseled out of the side. Here is some of my Jamestown Fluorite. And again, I could take you places where you can walk all over the ground and it'd be blue like this. And let's see, and that's going to be long wave. It's going to be long wave. All right, now here's an interesting one. This is willemite, but notice I'm using, this is a heavy guy. I found this one too, so it's in my collection. Dragging this across the hot New Jersey. And here it is, take a look, and then I'll illuminate it under shortwave. This is a 35 watt. Now look at it. I gotta say, this is 20 pounds. Pretty impressive. And there's a little bit of calcite on there. Here. Oh, here. Here is your classic Franklin piece of red calcite and green willemite, and the black is Franklinite that does not fluoresce. This I did not find. I bought this from the guy who let me into the mine dump for probably 20 bucks. And then this one here has beautiful hexagonal crystals of willemite, giant willemite crystals. And it's no phosphorescence on that guy here. This one here is, this is what we find up in Crawford, Nebraska, Cal Sydney. And there's now a new one that somebody went up there, and I tried to find it. I went out at nighttime by myself with my buddy was at camp. He didn't want to go, called Watermelon Cal Sydney, where the Cal Sydney is green on the outside and in the middle is red calcite. And that fetches a pretty good, this would be $50, $75 piece. Well, here I am, take the truck, I'm 10 miles from camp, go around the hill. We're out of walkie-talkie range, and I'm just going, oh gosh, coyotes are howling. What if I fall? I can't get a hold of them. And all of a sudden, ding, my phone rings. And perfect cell phone reception up there. I could run Netflix in my tent. So so he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm poking around on this side, so let's just use the cell phones, and if something happens, I'll let you know. But it was really, really spooky being in total darkness by myself up there. So I'll leave these here so you can take a look. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you all coming. I hope to at least, it won't be this year, but it will be run next year, a trip up to Crawford where you'll be able to hunt the Cal Sydney beds, and also the agates. The agates will go different colors as well. And you can pick up my card and also the Fluorescent Mineral Society's card. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.